We had several Supreme Court decisions drop this past week. I've talked about one of them, I'll talk about some more, but let's talk about how the Supreme Court just got so conservative. How are we going to do this? We're going to talk about each justice, starting with Justice Thomas, the most senior justice on the court, and who he replaced. We'll do this for each of the 9 justices, but let's start with Justice Thomas. He was appointed in 1991 by First Bush, George H.W. Bush. Interestingly, for Supreme Court aficionados, he had been appointed to the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, also by Bush. He was preceded by Robert Bork. Bork is possibly the most famous failed Supreme Court nominee, at least in recent times. Thomas has become possibly the most reliable conservative voice on the Supreme Court, and I believe he leads the court in solo dissents over the past decades. Who did he replace? Thurgood Marshall, possibly one of the most liberal Supreme Court justices, at least in recent memory. Marshall started his judicial career on the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, appointed by John F. Kennedy. He was then the Solicitor General of the United States, appointed by Lyndon Johnson, and he was preceded by Archibald Cox, another interesting tie to Watergate, just like Bork. Then, in 1967, he was appointed to succeed Justice Tom C. Clark by Lyndon Johnson. Marshall retired in 1991. He had been in poor health, and back then, justices were not as likely to wait for a favorable president, in their view, to nominate their replacement, though I can't believe that Marshall was happy with the appointment of Thomas. So, a very conservative justice, maybe one of the most conservative ever on the court, replaced a very liberal justice, maybe one of the most liberal in all time of the Supreme Court. Next, we're going to do Chief Justice John Roberts.